What's up, everybody? This is Fred Richani of TSC News. I have right here on the line a very special guest. He is a WWE Hall of Famer. He is the original LL Cool J, and he is a man ready to rock the New York area on SummerSlam weekend, like Terry Funk versus Ric Flair in New York Knockout. I'm talking about good old JR, Jim Ross. JR, how's it going?
Good, Fred. Couldn't be better.
Now, you got a big show coming up, Gramercy Theater, August 22nd. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But you've been a very busy man as of late. Just had a fun weekend at the possibly last Mid-Atlantic Legends Fan Fest in Charlotte, North Carolina. Featured the likes of Lance Storm, Gerald Briscoe, Rip Rogers, Les Thatcher, among many others. How was that?
Oh, it was good. It was good. And there will be another Mid-Atlantic Fan Fest. It's going to be next March in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So they're going to move it from Charlotte to Myrtle Beach in March. And I think tickets are already available at NWAlegends.com. So, but the event organized, ran by Greg Price was excellent. You know, a lot of folks are there that I hadn't seen in a long time, and thoroughly enjoyed my time, and I think that it's certainly one of those events that I would encourage fans to check out at some point when their schedule permit, because it's just very casual, but it's organized, and there's a lot of different folks there, a lot of different things. I did some live Q&As, kind of like I do my podcast, interviewing people that I really had fun doing. So it was a good experience. I was really glad I got booked, and I appreciate the opportunity to return to Charlotte. And it had been a long time since I've been there. And while I was there, I was on the Paul Feinbaum show on the SEC Network, and that was a lot of fun. So it was a good trip all the way around.
And if you're a young wrestler, you should definitely make your way out there, because I'm sure, as you know, JR, I mean, again, Les Thatcher, Rip Rogers, Lance Storm, Nigel McGuinness training people over there. I mean, that's an all-star team of trainers. So if you want a real evaluation of where you're at this point in your career, I mean, that's the place to be.
Yeah, and you add Jerry Briscoe to that group, and you got as good a talent evaluators as you can assemble. So they do that every year. So if you're a young independent wrestler, or if you're someone that's thinking about getting in the business and has had a little bit of training, you just kind of want to see where you are and see what the others think about your potential. I agree with you. It's a really a good tool to utilize, and I'd definitely encourage a young talent to take advantage of it, because it's not just lip service. Though they get in the ring, they demonstrate things, they explain things. There's not a gun to their head. There's not it's not high pressure. It's a teaching mechanism, and it's an evaluation mechanism, and so it works out very well.
Have you been watching Tough Enough at all?
Yeah, I watch it. I'm not a big fan of the format. I'm a fan of the brand, the Tough Enough brand. I've always enjoyed the theory behind it, and especially in the beginning. But now it's so it's just another reality show on television, and there are a lot of them on, and so either you like them or you don't. I think there's a lot of good in it, but I'm not real wild about the format. I don't think that the turnaround on the votes gives people enough time to think about what they want to do, and it seems like the voting process should go on throughout the week, and then you should have your elimination at the beginning of the next show, and then kick it off, and then get to the final three, and then wait, and let people vote all week. Let people talk about it all week. Let people discuss it and keep it alive, because it seems like once it goes off the air, it's kind of out of people's mind after maybe a day. So I watch it. That's the bottom line. Is I watch it, and I think Miz has done a real nice job replacing Hogan. I think Miz is really good in those verbal roles. I like Billy Gunn and Booker and Lita. They're all three people that used to work on my talent roster when I was in charge of the talent roster there. So there's a lot of elements about it that I do like. There's just the basic format of the voting leaves a little bit desired, in my view.
Is there any advice you could give the eventual winners of $250,000? Because they're definitely going to get some heat and have their growing pains.
Yeah, it's a tough deal. It's got great sizzle, sounds great. It's good programming in that regard, but the winners are going to, they're going to be scrutinized at every turn of the road, but it's a lot of money, and I'm sure it'll be paid out over a few years. I'm assuming. I don't know that somebody's going to get a check for $250K on the night that they win, but maybe they are. I don't know. But yeah, there'll be some of that. There's always jealousy in the locker room. Still different in an NFL training camp right now. Everybody's trying to make a 53-man roster. So if you think that NFL is different than WWE in that regard, then you really are kind of misled by reality.
Right. Now, over the weekend, unfortunately, was also the unfortunate tragic death of Roddy Piper. You wrote quite a bit about him for Fox Sports as well as your own website, but just for any fans that maybe didn't get to grow up seeing Roddy Piper in his prime, can you just share a few memories of his greatness, whether it be as a heel or a babyface?
Well, he was arguably the best TV wrestling villain of the modern era that included cable television and full forward. I have a hard time seeing anybody that surpassed him as a true heel in the business. Flair had his run as a great heel, and I thought Shawn Michaels was just an absolutely phenomenal heel. Ole Anderson was a natural-born heel without question. But Roddy was just, I think, at the top of the list because of his personality was so infectious. His interview style was so unique. And, back in the day when those guys were, before the curtain had pulled back on the business, the heels carried a lot of heat, a lot of angst. They had to be careful where they went. They had to be careful, how they conducted their everyday life because they were always a heel. And, a lot of them got stabbed and assaulted. And, I remember Bill Watts telling me that when he used to heel in New York, he got warm urine poured in his face out of a cup, during his days in Washington, D.C., working with Bobo Brazil and then the Garden working with Bruno Sammartino. So back in not that far ago, real heels had to be tough guys. They had to have a set, and they had to have no fear. And Roddy fit the bill and all that. He was a child of the streets. He wasn't formally educated, but he had great street smarts. He understood what it took to be a heel, and he had to cheat to win and gain unfair advantages and bitch and moan a little bit and leave the ring when it got a little too hot occasionally and play the crowd, and he was excellent at it. He wasn't an individual playing the role of a wrestling villain. I get that a lot today watching some of these guys that are positioned that way. They seem to be playing a role of a bad guy when they're not really a bad guy. Roddy Piper was not a bad human being, but if he had to defend himself in a real situation, he had no issues doing that. And I think that that's what separated him from a lot of his peers then and certainly now, is that he didn't play the role of a bad guy. He was very quiet and more often than not in his latter years when you got him by himself. He loved talking about his family, and that was his favorite topic. But he was gregarious and had natural charisma, amazing timing. So no one's going to replace Roddy Piper. He was an extension of his natural personality, and that equated to a major pro wrestling star. And guys like Piper and Dusty Rhodes and guys like those type of individuals who are just extensions of their own personality, they're just not going to be replicated. It's just not going to happen.
And the one thing that amazes me, too, about Roddy Piper, is his mental toughness and the fact that he stuck to his guns. I read this week's Wrestling Observer newsletter, that a bio on Piper, and it talked about how he wouldn't work in the Portland area, even when working for Vince, because he didn't want to go against Don Owen, who he was loyal to. He wouldn't work in some parts of the Carolinas because he was loyal to Mr. Crockett. And he outright refused to do jobs outside of a few exceptions to Snuka, Bret Hart, and I think Ric Flair. I mean, that's a hell of a set you have to go up to Vince McMahon and let him know, hey, man, I'm not doing this.
Well, he didn't do it to be obstinate. He didn't do it to be attitudinal. He did it because he had, in his mind's eye, a very good reason based in loyalty. And there isn't an overabundance of loyalty within the genre of pro wrestling. There never has been. The guys that were very loyal to their bosses or the bookers or the owners stand out, and they're still topics of conversation when that matter comes up. But it's a lot like big time sports. Free agency destroyed loyalty. It's all about the money, and any player that says it's not about the money is really trying to tell you it's all about the money. So we can thank free agency for that. It's good for the players. Maybe it's good for the game. I don't know. But I know that when I was a kid, I could tell you who the starters were on virtually every Major League Baseball team, and I would be dumber than a third grader right now trying to do that. So as a result, I've ceased being a fan of MLB. I watch the playoffs. I watch the World Series maybe, but during the season, regular season game, I'm out. I'm not interested. I don't know who the players are to any large degree. I don't have a team to follow. But Piper just had that. He had a strong loyalty to those that helped him. And when you're having matches when you're 15, trying to make enough money to buy food in a one-room apartment or an efficiency just to have a roof over your head, loyalty is a big deal. So he was raised in a different era. People are raised in today's era are young guys that are more defiant and feel a sense of entitlement. And I think that's just a sign of our society today, good, bad, or different. But he was raised in a different society in a different time, and he had different values. And loyalty was one of the prominent ones.
Speaking of free agency, you've done some work a little bit for the OKC Thunder. You're a Thunder fan. What's the mood like there in Oklahoma? Are fans worried that Kevin Durant's definitely going to leave, or do they feel like it's a good chance that he will stay and try to make another run for a title with Russell Westbrook?
I don't think anybody's saying that KD is going to definitely leave. I don't think KD would say that at all. Oklahoma City can offer KD more money than anybody else because of the collective bargaining agreement and all that good stuff. But I think Oklahoma City needs to make a playoff run this year to ensure that he's going to stay. I can see him being a lifer here. His mother loves it here. His family loves it here. He's not bothered. He's not harassed. He has plenty of time in the off season and obviously the money to go to any hot spot he wants in the world to party or relax or whatever. So the city here loves him dearly. But I do think to ensure that he stays with Billy Donovan as the new coach, they need to make a deep run in the playoffs in a loaded Western Division. And in order to do that, they can't but they can't have happen this year what happened last year, and that's a litany of injuries. You can't have Westbrook and Durant both on the injured list for significant lengths of time, and expect that team to be to make a playoff run. So they damn near made it, got in the playoffs, but they just were too banged up, and KD was out, and so if they stay healthy, I like their chances to be in the mix. But the Western Division of the NBA is by far the strongest division of the two. I don't think it's even close. So whoever wins the West, unless they just beat the hell out of each other getting to the finals, should win the NBA.
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely don't see anybody coming out of the East right now. I mean, maybe the Cavaliers, but outside of them, I mean, unless the team makes a big move like the Bulls or something, I mean, yeah. I think the West is definitely going to rule. And you got the Spurs, too, who got LaMarcus Aldridge. I mean, yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting Western Conference in 2015, 2016. And speaking of great runs, Ronda Rousey has launched herself into the stratosphere of superstardom when it comes to athletes. I mean, she is mainstream. This fight with Bethe Correia is said to have done very, very well above expectations, maybe even higher than UFC 189. I know you've been around a lot of draws in your day, signed a lot of people that turn out to be big draws, Steve Austin, The Rock, Ric Flair, among many others, but have you ever seen anything like the Ronda Rousey phenomenon?
No, not really. I've been a big fan of hers since she was wrestling for Strikeforce when they would have their shows on Showtime, because Mauro Ranallo is a good buddy of mine, and I always try to support Mauro's work. I think he does a great job of doing boxing and, any combat sport. So I've been a fan of hers from the get-go. She always had the it factor. She was one of those types of people that you couldn't really take your eyes off of for whatever your reason was, either athletically, the sex appeal, her look, her smile, her scowl, whatever it is. I had her on my podcast, The Ross Report, early on, and she's a big wrestling fan, and I would luckily say she's a fan of my work and followed me over the years because she was a wrestling fan and watched Monday Night Raw. But she was a great guest. My podcast drops on iTunes, and Podcast One every Tuesday night at 9. I do one show a week, and so it's been doing very well. But Rhonda was an outstanding guest, and we talked about her days of being a bartender. The point I'm trying to make is that she can communicate with virtually anyone. She can identify with normal people, but she has extraordinary skills and a magnificent work ethic. I don't think that she will ever be content with her game. And so she will always work hard to improve her game. And when you find people like that are never satisfied, Steve Austin never, in his view, would tell you he ever had his greatest match. He's never had that. He hasn't had it yet. So she's a lot like that. I think she's a perfectionist. She'll always work hard to get better, but she's the biggest star in MMA. And I like what UFC is trying to do and helping manufacture the image, the persona of Conor McGregor. Hopefully some of their other fighters will take heed and smarten up and learn that they have to learn to market themselves in an organic way and not a phony way. But in my view, Ronda Rousey is the best. She's the top MMA star in the world, without question. And I'm just a huge fan of hers. And I made it back from Charlotte on Saturday night, and I ran up to my neighbor's house, who's the offensive line coach at Oklahoma University, and I got to see the last four fights of the show, of the pay-per-view. But I would have, if we had not gone there and had not been invited, my wife and I both had decided on the airplane, well, we both love Ronda's fight so much that would buy the pay-per-view just to watch her fight. So whether that would be a wise investment or not is irrelevant. but she's got the it factor, and it's only going to get better. And I think that she will do whatever she can, and WWE will too, if they're as smart as I perceive that they are, to work out something that she would be involved at WrestleMania, Texas, in a controlled environment, because her presence on that show, if you think about it in this context, you'd have Brock Lesnar and Ronda Rousey on the same pay-per-view, the same major show in April at WrestleMania. You got two of the most proven pay-per-view big event sellers of all time. So then you can sizzle in maybe a role for Austin, not wrestling, but a role that has some significance. Who knows? Maybe it's Rock and Rousey against Hunter, Triple H, and Stephanie. I don't know what it's going to be, but I just know that if WWE can utilize Ronda Rousey at the WrestleMania 32, it would be a smart move.
Oh, for sure. And the UFC is looking like geniuses right now with how they've marketed Rousey, how they've marketed McGregor. But those two individually have done their part, too, to deliver not just in the octagon, but outside of it with their media appearances, their promos, how they carry themselves. Do you think a lot of young wrestlers coming up today can learn from how Rousey and McGregor market themselves?
Of course they can. They can learn from some of their predecessors. This thing that Rousey and McGregor are doing today is not new. It's just the fact that it's new to the MMA world. The MMA guys that try to be tough guys or try to sell their fights, they go over the top. They become disingenuous sometimes. It's staged. You can't see through Ronda Rousey. You can't see through Conor McGregor. They're just allowing their natural personalities to be amplified and utilized. But that's the same thing that great wrestlers did back in the day, before promos and things like that became being scripted. You found real personalities that could communicate and had stellar verbal skills, and they utilized them, and the promoters got rich off of them. So McGregor, absolutely though. But if you're a young wrestler and you want to see how somebody carries himself, if I'm a diva, a female wrestler for WWE, for example, I want to watch every move Ronda Rousey makes, because I want to navigate my career to her success level. I want to be able to market myself in film and print and everything else, and anything I can do to make myself more like a Ronda Rousey without being blatantly plagiarizing her work. It's what I'm going to do. Success follows success. Money follows money. And to try to ignore her would be really a lack of marketing expertise. It would not be very strategic.
In a couple months, your boy Daniel Cormier defends his light heavyweight title against Alexander Gustafsson. And you know Daniel Cormier is going to be hyping that fight with his great promos. The next month you have Robbie Lawler and Carlos Condit, who really don't talk a lot of trash, but I mean their fights are so amazingly violent that they almost sell themselves. And in December and January we're probably getting, knock on wood, Aldo versus McGregor and perhaps Rousey versus Tate 3, maybe in Cowboy Stadium. But in between all that, we have Demetrious Johnson versus John Dodson. And here's Demetrious Johnson, who's a spectacular fighter. I'm not sure how much you've seen of him, but he's a lot of fun to watch. You know, has gotten a lot of finishes, including a big one on Fox a couple years back against Joseph Benavidez. But for some reason, he arguably is the least over champion in the entire promotion, despite being so dominant. I'm not saying Dana and Lorenzo's job is easy, but if I gave you their job for this next month, and I had to have you market Demetrious Johnson to a viable pay-per-view draw, what would you do?
Well, I'd put a camera crew with Demetrious every waking hour of the day, and I'd find in his normal life things that were compelling that would allow him to relate to the general ticket buying, pay-per-view buying public as best I could. I'd get to know his family. I'd get to know that he's a family man. You play to his natural strengths. You don't try to you don't try to manufacture something that isn't there. But you've got to put him in his natural habitat, his natural environment, and then take excerpts of that and start doing your video and your pre-fight hype videos. There's always something about a world-class athlete that we average mortal guys gravitate to, and you just have to find it. And one of the ways of finding it with him is that you just got to, I don't think he's the kind of guy that you bring into a studio and say, today we're going to do videos. We're going to talk to you about, we're going to get the footage for your pre-fight stuff. I don't think he's that kind of athlete. I think you got to get him. I want to see him go to the grocery store. I want to see him do his road work. I want to see him work out. I want to see him play with his child. I want to see him interact with his wife or his parents or his in-laws or his neighbors. Because you got to make him. He is an average guy. He's a little guy. Mighty Mouse is a little guy, but you got to find something big about his personality and about his real life. So and then once you discover those things, and he sees how well it works, then he should be smart enough to take the ball and run with it. All those guys should understand they have a short shelf life. This great thing of making big money, and Cormier knows that. There's a sense of urgency because there's a lot of people I talk to that think Daniel's not going to beat Gustafsson in Houston because he can't. He's not going to be able to combat his Gustafsson striking and his reach advantage. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. And I'm a DC fan, so I'm a Cormier guy. I hope he wins without question. But I think for him to win, he's got to destroy the vertical base of a bigger, taller guy and take him down and beat his ass. But the Mighty Mouse, you just go find the great personality traits that are endearing and understood by the average Joe, and then the things he does in camp are so extraordinary. Him jumping a rope is freaky. Him running, his agility, his stamina, his diet. All those things you can add to that, but I'd have a camera crew and an astute producer, basically living with him till I found what I needed to put on television and make him extraordinary or make him more special than he is.
We've got some fan questions here. You ready to take a few?
Sure.
Okay, this one here is from Jay George. What was harder for you to do the first time? Podcasting, your one-man show, or commentary?
Probably the one-man show. The commentary, Bill Watts was a great mentor, and I had been preparing myself my entire life to be a sportscaster. That's what I always wanted to be. That was my goal as a little kid. Listen to all the great sportscasters I could get on my transistor radio, namely Jack Buck and Harry Carey. But I listened to all the greats. I was born in a great era where I could listen to Keith Jackson and Chris Schenkel and Kurt Gowdy and Ray Scott, among others. Some were all in Madden, of course. Those guys were all great role models for me to learn from. But so the play-by-play and the commentary, it felt natural. It felt like I was ready. I've been preparing since I was a little kid to do that gig. And then Bill Watts was so good at helping me know what to say and then, more importantly, what not to say and what descriptors and adjectives to use for a baby face, for a heel, all the science of broadcasting. The podcast was an extension of that. I'd done a lot of radio. I'd done Atlanta Falcon radio. I'd done college football radio. I'd been a guest on hundreds of radio shows. So once I got the format down on how I was going to do my podcast, that was cool. But when you go out in front of a live audience, and you don't have a net, and you're doing humor is hard. And, so sometimes people don't laugh, and it can take you out of your game. But and then what stories are marketable, what stories are money and which ones aren't. So the one-man show was the hardest thing, and now when I'm out doing them, they're the most fun thing that I do, because of the same reason that they were so challenging. I'm in front of a live audience, and it reconnects me to the fan base, which I love, and it's supported me in all my projects over the years. So I'm a big fan of getting better at anything I do, but right now the one-man show, like, I got one date at the Gramercy Theater, one date in New York City all year. I look forward to it for months. I've got material prepared. It's for a guy like me to still go to New York City and play the market is a big deal. It never gets old. That's like broadcasting in the Garden. It never got old, no matter what. And then, of course, we picked a weekend we thought would be a real busy wrestling-centric weekend. And WWE, to their credit, and I would have done the same thing. I'm not angry about it, but to their credit, they booked the NXT show not against us, but on the same night that my show is, on a Saturday night, the Saturday night before SummerSlam. And, it's affected our business. But it's not affecting my enthusiasm. I'm still going to do some media there, and I'm going to come into the market. My show in Washington, D.C. is on the Wednesday night before SummerSlam on the 19th at the D.C. Improv. Well, last night, as we're recording this, we sold out of the VIP tickets, where you get the meet and greet, the photo op, and your swag signed and all that stuff. And we have 45 tickets, period, remaining for the D.C. Improv, which is a very prestigious comedy club on the tour. So I'll have a sellout under my belt on Wednesday. Then we come into New York and do some media, and then do that show. So I'm disappointed that I picked a bad date. So I'm not blaming anybody but myself. I just thought it'd be a good date to make a wrestling weekend out of it. I didn't know that NXT was going to be that night, or we tried to move our date to the afternoon so you could do a whole thing. You could do our show and then go to the NXT, but Live Nation didn't feel comfortable moving it. So they're my promoter, and they're paying me, so we did not move the date. So it's at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, August 22nd. And I think by the end of the day, once the NXT event sells out, and there's only a few hundred tickets left for that event, I mean like 400 or 500, that's what I've been told. Hopefully once it sells out, people will give the consideration to come to my show in the Gramercy and have some laughs and have some fun. And so that's the challenge of touring, Fred. That's sometimes you run into that. It's just the way that it is, but it's not going to lessen my effort or my desire to have fun. And the people that do come are damn sure they're going to be telling people, Benny should have gone to JR shows. It was great. So that's at least that is my goal. But the irony is that the one-man shows are the most challenging, but they're also now the most fun experience that I do.
Yeah, I mean, they are so fun. I went in January. That's when I first met you in person, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a very personable experience. We got to meet you afterwards. You had a very special guest, and Sean X-Pac Waltman. For anybody that is thinking about going around the fence, I'm not just saying this because you're on, JR. I mean, it is a whole lot of fun. You got a lot of great stories, personal stories, a lot involving your wrestling history as well. And it kind of reminds me of kind of like those old school MMA expos when the UFC started booming and a lot of people really started getting attracted to a lot of UFC fighters because they were so personable. A lot of athletes and public figures, you can't always approach them. But with a lot of these expos, you can walk up to them, talk to them about their fight and everything. And with you, I got to chat with you for a bit. So if you do want to chat with an all-time great, if you do want to chat with JR about anything, UFC, the Sooners, wrestling, whatever, definitely go there. And you have a great Q&A. You take every question. You didn't shy away from everything. Hell, you even went a little long. I believe your exact words were to your producer on stage. You said, "Are we going long?" "Well, I don't give a shit." And then you kept going for another 15 minutes. So that was a good time.
Yeah, I have fun. It's invigorating to be people have questions, and I don't, like you said, I don't. The questions are uncensored. You know, you're going to pay the money to come see me. Tickets for that Gramercy Theater show start at $25, so it's not like it's you got to break the bank to come. And so if you're going to come enjoy the show and you're going to participate in the Q&A, you should be able to ask whatever you want on any topic. And I don't shy away from anything. So that's. But you know, I'm having fun doing it. It's reconnecting me with the live audience. And it's like The Rock, you know, and I talk from time to time. It's the same thing. The reason he comes back and works in WWE is not for a payday. He loves that adrenaline rush and that, you know, that closeness to the live audience. It's so different than filming movies where you have multiple takes and so forth and so on. So he's... and we are on the same page there. You can't replicate how great it feels to be, you know, around your fans and your friends and people have supported you and that they really want to be there. So it's infectious for me, and I'm having a great time with it. So, and hopefully we'll, you know, I like to think I'm some of that Austin Rousey-esque perfectionist. There are things I work on, and I reevaluate what I do, and I think I get better at at those presentations. At least that's the goal. I've never thought, well, that was a perfect show. If I do that show every night, I'll be really, really happy. I'm not there yet, so it's always a work in progress.
And I'm sure being in the New York area, I mean, SummerSlam has taken place in New Jersey multiple times at the old Continental Airlines Arena, now the Izod Center, which is closed down. MSG, of course. What SummerSlam memories come to mind being in the New York area?
SummerSlam memories?
Yeah, as far as like, you know, Undertaker versus Austin with Highway to Hell, everything they had going on there.
You know, gosh, that's hard, Fred, because I had to go back and look at, you know, I did so many events. The thing in general, the audience is always seemingly emotionally invested, the New York audience, and I think that's cool. If they don't sit in their hands, they generally let you know how they feel. Even if they don't like something, I like the fact that they'll let you know they don't like that. But you know, and Austin and Undertaker had a epic match. They never had the greatest chemistry working with each other. That and it's just a clash of styles. They both like the hell out of each other, and they both have great, immense respect for each other. But it was just that, you know, they say styles make fights, and both their styles just didn't. I don't think ever resonated to the degree that they resonate with other people. And again, it wasn't a personal issue. Just, you know, it's just the yin and the yang didn't quite connect, in my view. Did they have stinkers? No, of course not. But you know, you just the expectations for an Austin Undertaker knockdown drag out were so high that I don't know that they or anybody else could have lived up to the expectations. But SummerSlam is always, you know, it's especially this year with it leaving LA. You know, WWE's going to do all they can to make it a massive, you know, the summertime WrestleMania event, so to speak. And I think that's why they're doing the NXT show, which is going to sell out the Barclays Center. They sold out the SummerSlam show in a matter of minutes. As a matter of fact, at my Gramercy show the night before, we're going to give away two primo SummerSlam tickets to an attendee at our show. Somehow I haven't figured that out yet, but and then they got Raw there on Monday, so they really pulled out all the stops with some autograph sessions and to make SummerSlam a very special weekend for the New York audience. And I don't want to offend any New Yorkers by saying, well, it's not New York, JR, it's Brooklyn. For us lay people that live outside the boroughs, Brooklyn is New York, and New York is Brooklyn. So they're all interconnected, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So even though they're not playing the Garden, they're treating New York City as it should be, a very special place. And so I would have, if I had been in their position, I would have booked an NXT show on Friday night as well. So by any stretch of my, bitching and moaning and whining, it's just the competitive nature of what all we do. You're on the road, and if I can't sell another couple hundred tickets in the Big Apple for my show, then shame on me.
And we'll take one last question here. This one from Ben Ostner, and this is an appropriate one. JR, how do you see your Sooners looking this football season?
Well, hopefully we will exceed our 8-win total of last year, and a lot of it's going to depend on, two things primarily. One, quarterback play, because there's a 3-man competition now for the quarterback position, and injuries, because the team is young, a lot of depth issues in that regard. Youth will play a role. Coach Stoops has always said, if you're good enough to play your first year on campus, you'll play, and he's always kept his word. We have a 31-year-old offensive coordinator that's from the Mike Leach School of Coaching, but we also have a 245-pound running back named Samaje Perine that is extraordinary. He's an Adrian Peterson-esque hoser. He had a 400-yard rushing game last year. It set the all-time NCAA rushing record for a single game. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Leach philosophy, how it interfaces with a 245-pound block of granite and muscle in number 32, Samaje Perine. So short answer to a short question is we hope that we exceed 8, but we're in a very tough league. TCU and Baylor are both picked in the top 4 in the preseason. Texas is on the uptick with Charlie Strong. Oklahoma State has got a lot of good players back. The league's very competitive. So the team can win 8 games again, and that would really get the natives here uneasy. 8 wins is not a good year at Oklahoma. Win, lose, or draw, I'm a Sooner. I'm going to go to – I have plans on going to every game, home and away. I'm going to go to Neyland Stadium and on September the 12th when they play Tennessee for the first time at Neyland Stadium. As a matter of fact, I'm doing Ringside with Jim Ross show there on Thursday night, September the 10th in Knoxville. So I'm kind of coordinating my show with the football week in Neyland Stadium. So I'm all in. I'm all in with the season. Win, lose, or draw. You can't be if you're really a fan, you got to be a fan of your team whether they win or they lose. And that's like wrestling, in a sense. There's so much information now on the internet that people are so critical of creative and execution, and I critique things, but I have never lost my love for the product. I'm very worried about the fundamentals of wrestling and the in-ring, bell-to-bell being discounted, and I think it's counterproductive to the long-term success of the business unless you get back to some of the fundamental things that are just common sense. So, but I'm the same way with football. My team wins, I'm very, very happy. My team loses, I feel for them, and I hurt, but I don't jump off the wagon. So that's just how I was raised, and that's how I look at the. So I think Oklahoma's going to have a chance to win more than 8. I think we'll surprise people. Generally, when you get a Youngstown, Ohio boy like Bob Stoops, you back him into a corner, he's going to come out swinging. That's kind of where we see where we are right now. It's us against the world, and Barry Switzer used that philosophy very successfully at Oklahoma, and I think Bob will do much the same. So it's going to be an interesting year. A lot of unanswered questions, a lot of mystery, but it makes it for an interesting season, quite frankly.
Oh, hell yeah. Definitely looking forward to the season. Definitely looking forward to OKC. Most importantly, I'm looking forward to an evening with Jim Ross, August 22nd at the Gramercy Theater, New York City. Starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can get your tickets at livenation.com. Get more info by following JR at JR's BBQ on Twitter, as well as logging on to jrsbarbq.com. Anywhere else, JR?
No, just the tickets at the Gramercy are on sale at the box office and Ticketmaster. There are VIP tickets remaining. So they generally sell out the fastest. But I've got some remaining for that show, and it's a really cool deal where we get to do the meet and greet, private meet and greet thing, one-on-one, if you will. With the photo op, everybody's got a photo camera phone, and we do that, and I will sign their swag. And so the VIP is the way to go, in my view, for the full experience. But if you just want to come to the show, that's cool. It's $25, Ticketmaster. And so keep us in mind, and hopefully we'll see some of the folks that are listening at the Gramercy, Saturday night, the 22nd. Just remember, it's the night before SummerSlam. Can't miss it.
Oh, yeah. Mark your calendars. JR, always a pleasure, man. Thanks so much.
Okay, Fred. You be well, and thank you.